Hello and welcome to Spread Book Joy. In this Get Kids Reading series, I give you all the information that as a teacher I find invaluable when choosing high quality, engaging books for children. Just save yourself hours of reading and research by watching one video. To make life even easier, I'll put timestamps in the description so you can skip to the parts you are most interested in if you'd prefer. So, whether you're a parent or teacher, this video will give you all the information you need to choose books that get kids reading. As a bonus, at the end of this video, I'm giving away an amazing free lesson plan that can be used for school or home learning based on this wonderful book. Today's video is on Asha and the Spirit Bird by Jaspinda Balan, and you'll see an overview of the actual book itself, information on the author and a detailed synopsis of the story and main themes with some ideas for activities and a good online resource I've found. But best of all, at the end of the video I'll explain a bit about my free lesson plan and how you can get that. If you're new to the channel, I'm Jack, a teacher sharing my reading adventures and art experiments in order to spread the joy of books and reading as far and wide as possible. I share thoughts on books I've read alongside occasional amateur art experiments, which will hopefully give you something nice to look at while I talk and perhaps even inspire you to try some art experiments of your own. Today I'm really excited to talk to you about the magical Indian adventure Asha and the Spirit Bird by Jaspinda Balan. This gorgeous book. I read it after spotting it, and you can't fail to spot it you look at the cover, it's absolutely gorgeous. You couldn't fail to spot it in the bookshop. It sticks out a mile with this gorgeous cover, and I really enjoyed the book. And I would say, if you are a teacher selecting books, one bit of advice I would give you: read it yourself first. If you find you're struggling to get through it, that means that either the children are going to struggle to get through it, or you're not going to get the enthusiasm across for the text. Because if you're going to be spending some time on a text, not just for story time, but for work, and you're going to have to re-look at things and examine it, it's got to be something that, it's not something you hear often saying, oh, you teacher must enjoy it. But I don't understand how a teacher can muster up the enthusiasm for a text that they don't enjoy. So I got Asha and the Spirit Bird from Foyles when I spotted this gorgeous cover. I saw it was a children's fiction winner. I'd not read a lot about it. I picked it up purely, did the don't judge a book by its cover thing, but I did judge it by its cover. I picked it up because I thought it was so wonderful. I read the back and it said, this book in 3 words, magical Indian adventure, and I was sold. So I read it. It didn't take me that long to read. I really enjoyed reading it. It's beautifully written, some absolutely lovely, gorgeous language and descriptive language in there, and it's a wonderful adventure. I'm going to do a piece of artwork based on this using my iPad Pro and the Procreate app. Procreate is an art app for digital art using an Apple Pencil. It's $9.99 if anyone's interested in that app. It's wonderful. I use it all the time for practicing drawing, illustrations, planning out art experiments and things like that. And if you're interested in digital art, have a look online. There's loads of really good tutorials for Procreate for free on YouTube. I can really recommend a website plus YouTube channel called Bardot Brush, like Bridget Bardot, Bardot. I'll put that in the description below. But her videos are wonderful on Procreate, and she does these little daily art challenges in different art styles, and you can learn alongside her while you watch her. It's fantastic. I'm going to also talk quite a bit about the book, so this is your spoiler warning, and also a content caution. Something that came up which isn't in the blurb is there are some scenes in the book which include modern slavery and child exploitation, poverty, and there's a debt collection scene. I'm giving you those warnings because I don't want you to not know that these scenes are in here. I want to be really clear. The book is brilliantly written. It's not shocking. It's shocking in the sense of the content, but it's not written in a gratuitous way. It's something you can totally read with primary school children. And it took a turn, quite a dark turn, which I'll talk about when I do my synopsis, and which was surprising to me because it didn't say anything about this on the cover, on the back. It wasn't what I was expecting to happen, but it was fine. It all works out well in the end. So but just need to put that out there. Yes, so some trigger content warnings there. Information about the book itself. Look, it's beautiful. I just love these illustrations. I'm a big fan of good cover art, and This is by a Romanian illustrator called Aitch, and website I'm just going to put on the screen above, just stands out a mile, and everything on the cover is related to the story. This is the thing I love about book covers, and when you get into them, when you read the book and you're rewarded, when you come back you can look at the book cover together with the children and actually look at the detail in here and what's on here and how it relates to the story, and everything on here relates to the story beautifully. On the back, the blurb says this book in 3 words, magical Indian adventure, and I thought, I love that, this book in 3 words. I was thinking that that's something you could challenge the children to put up for their, like, a mini review or like a mini description of books they love in the book corner. You could say, you know, describe this book in 3 words. You know, Jack says this book in 3 words is fantastic, spooky, you know, mystery or whatever. So you can have, I thought it was a really nice little idea. I really like that. So the book it's $6.99 and it's by a really interesting publisher called Chicken House, and the author Jasbinder Balan, she was a winner of their fiction competition. So they run an annual competition in conjunction with the Times to look for new authors, and Jasbinder Balan won the 2017 competition, and this was the result. This was the winner of their competition, and they published it, Asha and the Spirit Bird. And then she also won one of the 2019 Costa Book Awards and was nominated for a Carnegie Medal. So this book does have the sort of credentials to back up what I'm saying about it being an excellent book for use in schools. The book trusts say it's sort of aged at 8+, aiming at the age group 9 to 11, and I'd agree with that. Yeah, year 5 and 6 book. So the book's 273, 74, 76 pages, and at the front you've got a beautiful quote all about, oh, this is really good. You've got a glossary at the front of Hindi and Punjabi words, and I love this because it means the story can be told with lots of, you just flow through the story without constant explanation of what things are, which seems forced and unnatural sometimes. Lots of exposition, no need for that. If there's a word you don't know, check if it's in the glossary, Hindi and Punjabi words. And also a great teaching tool. Children need to learn to use a glossary and need to understand it. It's in alphabetical order, they need to know how to find words in it. Great, I love that. You've also got a gorgeous quote at the start. Faith is the bird that feels the light when the dawn is still dark. Sums up a lot of the main theme, really, which is there's a lot about faith and belief in this book, and we'll go into that when I talk about the story as we go through it. But the book's scattered throughout with these lovely illustrations, and right at the end you've got a letter from Jasbinder Balan herself, the author, explaining about her childhood in the northern Punjab on a farm close to the Himalayas, and all the experience that she had there and her family and what inspired her to write the book, and her own ideas and her own what if questions that authors come up with. So, you know, brainstorming concepts that they might want to write about. What if this? What if that happened? It's a really good exercise for the children to learn when they're thinking about their own stories and their own ideas. So I'm going to cut away now to me doing my artwork while I talk to you a bit about the author, about the story and the themes and messages, and some ideas for teaching, including a brief outline of a lesson plan that I've written. I hope you like it. A little bit about the author. So she has her own website, and I'll link to that, just put that on the screen now. And her webpage has lots of information about her on it, and she was a teacher who quit to do a full-time creative writing MA. She was born in India on a family farm in the foothills of the Himalayas, and this is the inspiration of her book, for her book. And her grandmother used to tell them stories. Her Maji, her grandmother, used to tell them stories, and this is where she says she got her love of stories and magic from. But they moved to the UK when she was very young, and then the family just constantly reminisced about their time on the farm back in India, and she kept that spirit of story alive and all that magic alive. I loved her website. I think she also listed lots of books and things that she takes inspiration from, and if you have a little look at that list, you'll see quite a lot of children's books where there's magic involved and fantasy elements, so, and understandably so. It's a magical realism book. So magical realism is it's set in the present time. It's not set in a different world, it's set in the reality of our world. Not necessarily this time, but it's set in reality, it's set in our world. It's not a fantasy in that sense, but there are mystical, magical elements scattered throughout the book, and it makes it a really compelling read. The story is about a girl called Asha who lives in the foothills of the Himalayas, and we meet her living currently with her mum and her 2 younger siblings, and her father has gone off to work elsewhere. They live in rural India, so he's gone to the city to find work and send money home. And when we meet Asha, he's been gone for a number of months and they haven't heard from him for a while, and we discover that he hasn't been sending money home. And Asha discovers this because her mother is being harassed by a debt collector. So her mother was trying to survive with the children on the farm and has had to borrow money because the dad isn't sending money home. And Asha's a really interesting character. She's very mystical. She's got a lot of faith, a lot of belief in signs and symbols. And we learn that her grandmother, who she was very close to, said to her that you can see things that others can't. And Asha has green eyes and extremely precocious and verbose, and she's got a lot of very fierce beliefs and a real strict code that she follows and lives by. And she's got a very good best friend who lives in the same village called Jivan. Jivan and Asha provide a really good contrast to each other in terms of characters. She's really spiritual and mystical and believes in signs and symbols and things telling her things, particularly her grandmother who's passed away. Asha believes that she sees her in the form of a lammergeier, which is a type of a big bird of a big vulture, a big bearded vulture. And the lammergeier, she spots one in real life, and she believes this is the spirit of her grandmother watching out for her and watching over her. And she wants to know what's happened to her father. She wants to go and look for him. So her and her best friend Jivan, who's much more practical, more down to earth and more skeptical. And if you're as old as me and you watch the X-Files, he's the Scully to her Mulder. He basically is the cynic and she's the believer. And he says, well, let's go and, if you really believe this, if you've seen these things in dreams, we'll go and see the local witch and read your palm or whatever. So the local witch says she does some spooky things, and she actually does make the children go, whoa, how does she know all this stuff? And she tells them that she's got to go to this really important temple in the Himalayas. And I looked it up, and I think it's the Kedarnath temple, and it's the mouth of the Ganges. It's a very, very old, very special temple, special place of worship in Hinduism. Anyway, they've got to make their journey there and light a diva lamp there and to say a prayer. And then she wants to go on to the city and find her father. So it's a long journey, but they hatch a plan to go together. So on their first night away, Jivan and Asha share a mango from their village, and she keeps the mango stone the whole way through the story, and she's it's symbolic of her home. She has a pendant that belonged to her grandmother that her mother gave her, which she wears. She has a feather from the lammergeier bird, which she keeps. And then at one point, because they've run away from home, essentially they're runaways, they're reported as missing children, Asha cuts off her beloved she's got beautiful long thick silky hair that her mother oils and plats for her, and just shows you how important this hair is to her and her mother. And she cuts her plait off, and she puts but being Asha and being so mystical and so filled with the sense of the importance of these objects and these signs and things, she keeps her plait. She wraps a lammergeier feather, weaves it into the plait, and she decides when they get to this Himalayan temple, they're going to, which they have to make a pilgrimage on foot. And I've looked it up, it's a long old way. It's another thing which we'll get to when we talk about ideas for lessons and things. But she is going to make an offering of it to the Ganges in hopes that she can find her father. So constant signs and symbols, and the story, the themes of faith and belief run really strongly throughout. And it runs strongly because Jivan and Asha are constantly clashing over the fact that whilst they are very good friends and there's a lot of love and care between them, he is very practical, much more cynical, and they have some arguments about the fact that he never seems to believe her when things happen. But But Asha, you know, her belief is what drives them forward and keeps them going through some very hard times. You know, along the way, lots of awful things happen to them. And I did tell you, the book does take a bit of a dark twist when they go on foot to their pilgrimage to the Himalayan temple, but along the way they have to go off-road because they've been recognised by someone who knows they're runaways, and they spend like a week eating off forest fruits, and Jivan gets very sick, and as they get closer to the Himalayas it's getting colder and snowier, and you know, at one point she has to leave him in a makeshift sort of hut that they've made and go off and find help, and she finds a goat herd, and they come back and they find a tiger prowling around near the fire that she's left, and the boy shoots his gun and the tiger runs off. So lots of really exciting passages, lots of action-packed things that happen. And then they go back to this boy's family, and Jivan rests for a few days and they're well, and they make their pilgrimage to the temple. The scene in the temple is so vivid and evocative, and you can really feel the awe of the children in this place of worship. But it's a wonderfully brilliant description. It's a beautiful part of the book actually, and from there they go into the city. Now then you get this real contrast between the poverty, the extreme poverty and overcrowding of the city, and the rural India that Asha is from, you know, where she lives in, you know, a small village, and she's not used to so many people or people being treated in that way. She sees homeless people and beggars, and then the really dark turn it takes is that they're abducted by a woman and effectively sold into slavery. They taken to a place and they're sold into slavery with a lot of other children who have to pick over a huge mountain of rubbish and collect metal for some men. And one of the children, you know, says to Asha, yeah, my uncle sold me. So it seems really dire and really dark at this point, and this is where her faith and her belief is sort of she's lost it all, because she thinks she's never going to get out of there. But then again she finds another symbol and another sign. She finds a tin with a lammergeier bird on it, and that's the symbol of her grandmother's spirit bird, the spirit bird of the title. And so she shows it to Jivan, and Jivan's, you know, becomes to a point where she's saying to the other children, look, actually if we put our heads together we could come up with a plan and escape, and everyone's shouting her down and no one really, and she's starting to feel really despondent. And Jivan stands up and he says to all these other children, you don't know much about Asha. Asha has magical powers. She believes in things. She sees things other people can't see, which is something that her grandmother had said about her and the witch had said about her. And she can get, if she says she can get us out of this, you know, then you have to believe her. And it's the cooperation and togetherness with the other children. And, you know, her and Jivan love Three Musketeers, and their saying is all for one and one for all. So this is mentioned at this point, you know, that they can escape. So they all do escape. And when they get some other help at some point. They take the other children to a shelter in the city that one of the children had come from previously, and there's a really kind couple running it, and one of them agrees to, the husband is a rickshaw driver and takes her to the last known address of her father. And this is where another dark turn happens. They discover that the factory he was working in is burnt down to the ground, but they find a leaflet saying where the men might have been taken who might have survived the fire. They find her father there, and he's in a terrible state. He's not talked to anyone, he's lost his memory, and he doesn't remember them. So Asha begs to be left alone with him, and she does this is the thing, she's got these amazing expressions that she uses at the very start of the book. When the debt collectors have left the house, she hurls these curses at them. She's got this curse, it's on page 19, and she hurls a curse at these men and she howls it into the sky. It's more to relieve her tension and get things away from her, but it reminded me of, I did my dissertation for my BA on Roman curse tablets, because I did a BA in classical archaeology and I studied Roman curse tablets. And what Romans used to do, if someone had done them wrong, even if they didn't know who the person was, and you used to find a lot of these around the baths, if someone had their things stolen while they were in the bath, they would write the curse down. It's very much like that, the thing that Asha's written, and she howls this curse into the sky, and just descriptive language and really passionately done, and it reveals a lot about her character, which I'll go into. I'm going to use that as part of the lesson plan I'm going to outline for you. But she does that, and she also has this other belief in, she's got these words that she says like a mantra, like a declaration about herself and what her intentions are And yeah, she's just a great character, and she persuades, she sits with her father and she tells him, she thinks about all these things and she wills him to be better, and she gets out her mango seed, which she's been growing in this entire time. She's kept it with her and she's still got it with her, and it's been growing, it's a tiny little shoots coming out of it now, and she plants it beside him, and all these magical things happen, and lammergeiers appear when they escape from the scrapyard where they've been enslaved. A lammergeier appears at the window when she's with her father, and then she falls asleep at his bedside. When she wakes up, that mango shoot has turned into an actual plant. So lots of magical realism in the book. It all ends well. They go back to their village and they pay off the debts and they stay there. They manage to find, but all the money that they paid the debts off with means they still might have to go to England. But due to another symbolic, spirit bird lammergeier appearance, they discover down a well some long lost family jewellery, which means that they can have enough money to stay there and they don't have to leave the farm and they don't have to leave India. And so it ends in a nice happy way, but lots and lots of themes explored, and lots of things to discuss and debate, and I just think it's a really beautifully written book. There's a theme, the biggest theme is faith and belief, which is described in the very first, the quotation at the start of the book tells you that this is what this book is about. But it's also about friendship, the friendship between those two children, and about family and the power of, of family and to get you through, and the power of hope, and being stronger together, one for all for one, etc., as they keep saying throughout the book. If we cooperate, if we can do this if we do it together. But there's also the theme of power between adults and children, and Asha at one point says they think that these men that have kept them enslaved, they think that children have no power, and that is a real thing. Children are very helpless in lots of situations, and adults, there is this thought about adults taking children's power and thinking that children are helpless, but then children taking that back, and that's explored really well, and really key message there. So lots of good themes, and I've got a few ideas for teaching it as well. It's definitely excellent for some retelling, particularly the action sequences. You could do some really good recounts and retellings of those. You could do different points of view, do Jivan's point of view, or do a third person narration instead of the first person narration that Asha's doing. And it'd also be really excellent for some topic work, obviously, on India, on Hinduism. You can research the wildlife and the plants that she would have seen on the way. And I really love the lammergeier. Let them look up that bird. It's fantastic. Beautiful, beautiful bird. And also just fascinating that its diet and what it eats is quite a unique creature. So it would also be a really good stimulus for discussing child labour and poverty. And perhaps they could tell one of the stories of the children in the dump. They could do a first person recount of the arrival of Asha or the escape. Do an information leaflet on India. The lammergeier, like I said, is really fascinating. And the Kedarnath temple, when they go to the Himalayas, is a rich topic to investigate. You could also do information about that. You could do a non-fiction report, or you could do a leaflet or something. You could also do some persuasive writing around it, either some persuasive writing around forced and child labour, or if you want to do something more positive, you could do a persuasive tourist brochure about the Himalayas. That would be really excellent. What I was really fascinated with, and this is what I based my lesson plan around, is I absolutely love Asha's personal belief system and the magical realism that runs throughout the book. And she has lots of words of power, her curses, her her words of power that she uses to really make declarations about herself and her beliefs and what she's going to do. And she sees things that others can't. That's said early on in the book. And there's a really good debate to have is, was this magic? What happened? Did she bring down the lightning? Is it just coincidence? What do the children believe? And could they be creating their own story, their own magic system and belief system of meaningful words and objects of power? And that got me thinking that this could be a jumping off point for their own story. In the lesson that I've designed, children will be asked to examine how Jasbinder Balan has used signs and symbols. They'll look at symbolism and what symbolism actually is, and how Jasbinder Balan has used signs and symbols and words of power to build the character of Asha. Such an interesting character, I think you'll agree. And then the children will use the same techniques to create their own character. If you like the sound of that, just click the link in the description box below. It will take you to my website where you can sign up for my newsletter, and you'll get access to not only this resource but all my other free resources on there. There are book club plans, my Joy Book Club, which is short picture book plans that I produce once every 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'll also have access to my other free resources, a really wonderful lesson plan I have for instructions by Neil Gaiman, and an amazing extensive resource bundle for Coraline by Neil Gaiman as well. So if you enjoyed this video, please click like and subscribe. It would really help me out, and let other people know if you think they'll find it useful or interesting. And also, if you use this book, or if you have any success with a lesson plan or have any feedback at all, I'd love to hear about it. So if you know of the book, if you use it, if you like it, let us know in the comments below, and hopefully we'll see you again here next time. Bye.